What I want to do with this engine is strip everything off it, top cover, sump, everything except the big stuff, unless I find any reason to take it apart.
This guy's hilarious. He thinks he's not going to be taking that engine apart. You'll see when I put the engine stand bracket back on, I try and get the pivot point as high up as I can. Because I found it's a very heavy engine, very hard to turn it, so that helped a little bit turning it around.
So I can start stripping that down now and getting bits painted, getting it all cleaned up. The duck egg blue for the engine, black for the ancillary bits.
Off with a load of hoses, carburetor next. It looks like the alternator's coming off. All this stuff's nice and easy. And then I had to go with the pressure washer, and got very, very wet doing so. But as you can see, when the pressure washer hits the engine, there's some steam coming off. I've actually connected it to the hot tap, and it works very well. Well, I did later find a little bit of water in the engine because a lot of the seals were a bit too far gone.
Well, that's done. I'm absolutely covered and soaking wet, but I used the hot tap in the kitchen to connect through the hose pipe to the pressure washer, and when the hot water eventually came through, that's when it started to pull it off. So I kind of made it a makeshift steam cleaner almost. It looked a lot like a steam cleaner when the steam was coming off it. I'm so chuffed. It's pulled huge chunks of stuff off. It would have taken me forever with a scraper and petrol.
Right, that manifold is next. And amazingly, a lot of the bolts, well, all of the bolts, as you can see, just came off. This is the point where I spun the engine over and I was listening for noises, and I could hear from all 8 ports, more or less, I could hear this quite pronounced hissing sound as the valves were leaking air past them. So this is when I started tumbling down the rabbit hole into a full engine rebuild. I'll take the head off and see about grinding the valves back in. That won't cost much money. I did find one of the cylinders had a bit of compression. You could feel it on the spanner I was rotating the engine with. But yeah, this as soon as I get the head off, well, you get the idea. You see where this is going. So I got all the bits off, front pulley, front cover, a few of the brackets on the side of the engine, and then the sump comes off. Then I can have a really good look around it. Make a few notes as I go through, keeping track of where things go and the timing of the engine.
Well, the head's off. Looks fine. There's a reasonably even, apart from a slightly odd colouring here, I think it's just got warm. Reasonably even where the spark plugs look great. I think that was running harder. That plug looked cleaner than the others, but for whatever reason, maybe it's got better compression. Could be that one actually. And then here's the rest of the engine. This is as stripped as I want it. The timing chain looks great. There's a hydraulic tensioner, and when the engine switches off, it can revert back. And there's a few little clicky ratchets there. I don't know if you can see those. There you go. You can see those ratchets now. So the first 2, it's gone past those. It's sat on the 3rd. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more to go. So I would suggest that chain hasn't stretched very much. And there's a plate here which stops the chain vibrating. That's got no grooves in it. That looks really good. So that was all positive. The bottom end looked great. I mean, there's nothing untoward down there. The gauze is good. So it's all looking good for just paint up and put it back together. But these bores, they have a lip, a quite pronounced lip. You can catch your fingernail on it. You can catch your finger on it. In places, it's over here. It's huge. I mean, it's like 1/2 mil maybe. So to do this properly, well, that would be a full engine rebuild, wouldn't it? Ugh. Bore it out, bigger pistons, new rings. The crankshaft's probably fine. New bearings, that's all. I might actually get a cap off and have a look at a bearing. Let's do that.
Off comes the rest of the timing gear, making a few notes as I go along. Out with the camshaft and the followers. The main caps come off and the crankshaft is out. Now I've got some major problems trying to get the pistons out because they wouldn't come past the lip in the bore. But I figured, you know, replacing the pistons and the rings, I just kept hammering away and they did come out eventually.
Right, this is a full engine rebuild now, so that's fine. I've just done one of these on a Rover V8, and this is quite a different set of circumstances in this one. The crankshaft has come out looking fantastic. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the crankshaft, and indeed the bearings look pretty good. There's a couple of slightly dodgy spots on it. So this is the middle main bearing, and you can see that that's not happy there. This side nearest the camera. Weird. I don't really know. Well, most of them look so like brand new. They look like brand new. This one's clearly had a bit of stress. This could be something to do with it being a 3-main engine. But here's the big one at the flywheel end. You can see it's just fantastic. There's a tiny bit of wear in my finger here, look, that edge, but otherwise they're like very close to new, the thrust bearings too. Yeah, the bottom end's fantastic. The bores were a nightmare. I mean, you saw on a time lapse I couldn't get these out because the lip on the lip in the cylinder bore here is so pronounced. The piston rings didn't want to come over that, so it took a while to get them out. I thought they were going to come out the other way, which is unusual because most engines you can only get the piston in the top, but because it's a 3-main it looked like it might come out, but it didn't. But they did all go out the bottom. And again, the big end bearings, that one's really not so good, but the others are like brand new. They're really very good. Don't know why that one's, but the crank is fine anyway, so they're standard sizes too. That's lovely. So we'll need new pistons, new rings, and a full-on rebore. I think there's quite a few different sizes available for the pistons. So that sorts that lot out. The camshaft looked really good, considering what the bores look like. The camshaft looks amazing. Yeah, so most of the lobes look like that. You see, because the followers are cylindrical and they're narrower than the camshaft, you can see whether these are worn or not because there's no lip, there's no wear on them. So I was really quite pleased about the camshaft, and then I saw this one here. There we go. Look, that one's got a load of galling on it there, and corresponding. It's not that bad. The camera's making it look worse. You can barely pick it up with your nail, but you can pick it up with your nail. So I think I might have to get a new camshaft. And that follower's dicky, so probably all the followers as well. I think you keep these tubs, but the little followers inside need changing. Alright, with the block done, I've now stripped the head of all its little bits and bobs, temperature sensors and so on. And it just remains to get the other 7 valves out now. I've done that one already. I've had a good inspect around here, a bit of a clean up, and I can see it's definitely not got hardened valve seats. So hardened valve seats and the exhaust for unleaded petrol is obviously now on the list as well.
So now just to take the valves out using the valve spring compressor. And then I do a little clean up with the sandpaper.
I'm having a look at the valve guide. What's it called? Fit, I suppose. It's going to be 0.96 millimeters. So if I wobble it back and forth, we're basically getting 0.1, look, which is awfully close to 0.9096.
So here I'm checking the tolerances from the manual for the oil pump. There's 3 to check, and 2 of them look really good. And then the last one, you can see I'm wobbling a gear around. It's no good.
It looks like then the end float, so the distance from the straight edge, you can get a feeler gauge under the straight edge. They're on the top end of spec, so they're all right. The backlash, the size of feeler gauge I can get in between the teeth, is good. I can't get the top spec feeler gauge in there, so they're in spec there. And then there's a radial clearance between the tip of the tooth, and the casing. And the aluminium one, I can't get the very tight feeler gauge in there at all. So because it's supported by this shaft, the aluminium has not been free to touch the casing, so it hasn't worn at all. So it's like brand new in terms of that. It's I can't get the smallest feeler gauge in there and close that tooth in on the casing. But this one, well, this one's a very different story. Let's see if I can steady the camera so you can. There you go. Look. You can see that movement. Look. There's a lot. There's a lot. Right, that's the end of this video, folks. That concludes the strip down, if you like, and the inspection. I found I need new bores, so it needs boring out. It ends up being 20 thou, and honing new pistons and rings, new main bearings, big end bearings and thrust bearings, seals and gaskets throughout, a new camshaft and followers, and then it transpired. You saw me measuring the exhaust valve guide wobble. It transpires it wasn't good enough, so I got 4 new exhaust valve guides, and then we ended up putting hardened valve seats in for unleaded as well in the cylinder head. And of course, with the head and the block going to the engine shop, it had a full sort of check over as well, but no skimming, no crank grinding necessary. So in the next video you will see preparation work for putting it back together, cleaning up, painting parts, things like that, and the engine and block and the head are off at the machine shop. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Lots of time lapse in here, and tune in for episode 15 where we crack on with some more engine work. Thanks for watching, folks.